You're listening to When Love Comes, the podcast, a safe space for single women of faith on a journey of healing, growth, and preparing for the love you deserve. This resource was created with you in mind, so you'll be ready when love comes. Hey, y'all, welcome to another episode of When Love Comes, the podcast. I am your host, April Nowlin. I am a divorce recovery and relationship coach. And one of the things that I realized after 3 failed marriages was I knew nothing about healthy relationships. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how to prepare for them. I knew nothing. And so I have spent the last 5 years just immersing myself in relationships, talking to experts, getting certifications, getting training, all of those things so that I can bring you guys resources like this so that you and myself will be ready when love comes. And so I'm excited about my guest today. We met over Facebook not too long ago. And when I read her story, when I read about the work that she was doing, I was like, y'all, she has got to be on this podcast. So her name is Felice. And she is a certified life coach. She is a licensed counselor. And she also is the founder of something really cool called the Be Big Collective. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So one of the things that I learned, one of the things that a lot of my clients I see in them is after heartbreak, after their relationship ends, their self-worth, their self-esteem a lot of times takes a nosedive. And a lot, we don't always know how do we get that back. We don't always realize how valuable we still are after we've gone through a breakup. And so that's why I have Felice here today, because I want her to talk about, what does it mean to be big and what does that look like? So Felice, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, April. This is so exciting and so necessary right now.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, people are being triggered in different ways. And so they're having layers to a lot of the things that they're experiencing right now. So this is very timely.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So I want to dig into be big. Tell us, what does that mean and where did that come from?
So Be Big is an acronym for boundless, empowered, bodacious, intuitive, and grandiose. And really, that was a download that I received in my quiet time with God when I was searching and in a special space where I really needed something to happen and take place in my life. And that got downloaded to me. And basically, through further introspection and revelation, it is a call for us, for individuals to walk in their divine authority. And I am an unapologetic woman of faith, and I believe that as a child of or as a Christian, that I am supposed to be big. I am made in his likeness and in his image. And so I am supposed to take up space. I'm supposed to enter rooms with the gifts, the talents that he put on the inside of me. And for many, 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 many years, and a lot of it had to do with my past. Um, I was I was playing small. I was hiding. I was intentionally being on the sidelines, thinking that that's where I was supposed to be. And God started wrestling with me, and I was pregnant with Be Big. And so it has a lot to do with how I grew up. I share with everybody in my book, which is also titled Be Big, that I'm a domestic violence baby. So my original birth date was October 22nd, but I came into the world on September 28th. And that was due to my father um, beating on my mother so bad that she went into premature labor. So I entered this earth through trauma. And so Be Big is a journey of my entry into this world, the way that I witnessed domestic violence upon my mother repeatedly, the divorce of my parents, my childhood, and all the different things that I experienced as an African American girl growing up in the projects in Brooklyn. All of that had shaped me and brought me to today and brought me to Be Big. And so I share that journey and I share ways that we can all walk and I'll be big now.
I love it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that backstory. You talk about trauma, and one of the things that I learned on the journey that I'm on is that our heartbreak is a trauma. And in many cases, we don't treat it like that. We don't treat heartbreak as if we need to grieve or go through a healing process. And so the fact that you said, you entered this world through trauma and having to kind of navigate that from birth, right? So share with me, was there a moment? So you said, you were pregnant with Be Big. I'm sure like most of us with our purpose, we don't always know it in the beginning, but what did it look like? Almost like that aha moment of like, this is the work I need to be doing. This is, Be Big is what I need to be pursuing. What did that look like for you?
So it started with discomfort. I was extremely uncomfortable. And what does that mean? That means that I was discouraged about the career path that I was on. I was disgruntled. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was just through. And I was wrestling with what to do. Like, what was I supposed to do with all those different emotions? And literally, I was going through imposter syndrome. Because I was in corporate America, hating every minute of it, and I almost got fired. And that was my defining moment. Is that frustration almost turned into my demise, where I almost got fired. And I had a leader who, so it went past my immediate manager and it went to our second level manager, and she was an African American, and she literally gave me a second chance. And in that moment, I got prostrate with God. I literally, because I didn't know what to do. At that time, I was a single parent and I needed my job. And so I got before God and I was like, God, what do you want me to do? Like, what am I supposed to do with all of these emotions? And I literally didn't know. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And the first thing he told me was, you're going to get up and you're going to give this current job 110% because I blessed you with this job for this time. And so I did. I got up, I literally did a 180. I gave it everything. And that was the trajectory and the steps to literally, it moved me. Not only did I move out of that job, but I got a promotion. And then with that promotion, still friends with the leadership today, she literally worked it out because I was in banking. She literally worked it out so that the bank would pay for me to go and get my master's degree in counseling. So
Wow.
literally, it was that discomfort. And so what I tell my clients is that when you start getting uncomfortable, that is God's signal for a change. You are to seek him and ask him what to do with that discomfort, because that discomfort, that was my fire. That was my signal that I was supposed to pivot and go into another direction. And so that was what happened. That was the start. And me getting still and figuring out what my next steps was. But now those steps weren't overnight, but it was the steps, step by step, that literally changed my trajectory and got me positioned into what I was called to do. And that was to help individuals, families, couples figure out their root,
Yeah.
whether it's trauma, pain, anxiety, depression, whatever that was, and to figure out what their next steps was, that after the healing process begins.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. We talk about discomfort, and a lot of times we will look at discomfort as an inconvenience. But like you said, discomfort, whether that's in unhealthy relationships, in jobs we're not supposed to be in, just relationships with, platonic relationships, when we start to feel that discomfort, we need to listen to that, right? When we feel uncomfortable, we need to listen to that, but ask God, what do I do with this? Like, do I just sit in this? And most of the time, God is like, I'm trying to get you to move. I'm trying to get a change to happen. That's why you feel so uncomfortable.
Yes.
So you're married now, but at
Yes.
this time, you were, like you said, a single parent. I'm a single parent. A lot of my listeners are single parents that are in that space of trying to figure out, how do I be the best mom, be the best woman as I'm preparing for a healthy relationship, but we have some baggage that comes with that. And we're sitting with some emotional baggage. What do we do with that emotional baggage as it pertains to really preparing for healthier relationships? What do we do with that baggage that we have?
So you hand it over, you put it on the altar. Because a lot of times there's some things that are really beyond us, right? And sometimes we got to put things on the altar so that, and I know I'm mentioning get still a lot, but I'm just going to share my journey, because literally I was hating being single. Like I hated it. I thought something was wrong with me. Like, why is it that I'm not able to find love? Is there something wrong with me as to why I can't find love? Is there something wrong with me as to why I'm not meeting men who are worthy of me? Or am I worthy of them? Like, really went through that. And there came a point in my life where I literally, and I'm not lying, when I say I had a desert season, April, like it was all the deserts combined around the world, Sahara, Dubai, you name all the deserts. That was
Real
my
girl.
season. Like there was nothing. There was no dating. There was nothing. Right. And so I really used that time to love on my child. And I tell people they can't really do this a lot. But even though I was hating being single, I knew that that was my time to invest in my child. And the reason that I say that, and is because we're so busy thinking about having a companion. But when you have children that come into your life because of choices you've made, sometimes it's a sacrifice. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, I was like, you know what? I don't want to put my daughter through no toxicity. She already had a really good daddy that was a horrendous example of a choice I made. So why put her through continuous choices? Because I don't know how to just be still and get and listen to God about who the right man should be for me. So I didn't date. And I think that was the best thing for me and my daughter because I was my daughter's greatest role model.
Yeah.
And so one of the choices that I made about her father not being in her life was that I didn't want my daughter to have a role model that a man could come in and out of your life and if he threw you a french fry or McDonald's or a movie here and there, that you would be able and create a space in your life where you could settle for that and that would be enough. And I didn't want that for her. I wanted her to know that if you have to be alone, you good alone. And so
Yeah.
I modeled that and we did wonderful things. But when she went off to college, I literally did have a space of depression because my daughter was my companion, because it was
Mm.
just me and her. And nobody would believe me that I was depressed. Like they were like, no, no, you're going into therapy. Da, 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 da. You're a child of God, go talk to. And I was like,
Right.
y'all, I'm serious, y'all. I really think that I'm depressed. Like I lost my companion.
Yeah.
And again, I got still and God was like, go get you a life. And that's
Come
exactly
on.
what I did. I got me a life. And one of the things, this is the epiphany that happened, and I hope that I can share this with anybody. What came to me was how dare I believe that my life wasn't all that it could possibly be and that it wasn't as fulfilled as anybody else because I didn't have a romantic companion.
Come on.
How dare I see my existence on this planet as not being everything that it could be because I didn't have a romantic partner. I had been to Europe. I had been to Africa. I was
Yeah.
traveling. I had my own home. I had a daughter who I was able to give some great values, get off to college. And you mean to tell me that I'm going to belittle all of that because I didn't have a man?
Come on.
And I just was like, there's no way that I'm going to accept that for myself. And I
Yeah.
have a good life. Not only did I have a good life, I had the life that God intended for me in that moment and that I was to enjoy and find gratitude in every moment of it. And when I started living in that space, and I said, God, if you never send another man my way, I
Come
know
on.
that I am fulfilled, I am blessed, and I'm all that in a bag of chips. And then some. When I accepted that, lo and behold, now I didn't know he was going to be my husband, But lo and behold, after I got that life, I did. I met my husband, and I've been
Uh,
married going on 8 years now.
yes, congratulations. So we're going to dig a little bit more into that. But I love some key points that you made. So I'm a single mom, and I had that season as well, and it's still somewhat in that season of making sure that I have that I'm pouring into my daughter and teaching her what she needs to know in this season. So, like you, I was not the person, and I'm not the person where my daughter was going to see a revolving door of, Uncle so and so, right? And I wanted to teach her as well that being single was not a curse. Being single was not something wasn't a punishment. And a lot of
Right.
times we see it that way, that I'm single because I'm being punished for something or punished for my decisions. And like you, I've had the opportunity to take my daughter to Europe and to Hawaii and to do these things. But you said something really key that I love. When we talk about this season of singleness, a lot of times I hear the word in your waiting season. And I don't subscribe to that because waiting to me implies no motion, stagnant, that you're just sitting there, just, I'm waiting on my man to show up at the door. And so I prefer to think about it as your preparing season. So in that season of preparing, you answer the question that I get a lot. Well, what do I do right now? Get to living, live your life, do all the things that I'll hear women say, well, I'll buy a house when I get married. I will, travel when I get married. I'll start a business when I get married. Start living, buy a house, travel, buy the car you want, start the business, go get, another degree. Do all those things that we were taught that, we need to wait for this other person. So I want to talk about now transitioning into dating. So you had this season where, it was you and your daughter. I understand that feeling, like you said, of being depressed because your daughter was your companion. And now it's like, okay, who do I have now? So you're out here living. What did it look like to start dating again? And did you have any insecurities or things that came up in that season?
Oh, definitely, right? Because even though you're healing, you have to make sure you keep that healing, right? Like you have the rigor is making sure that the things that you learn, you live in that. But we have a tendency to go back to old patterns. And so I had to fight certain things. And when I was dating, um, one of the things that I learned about myself and that I tell a lot of clients, I'm like, look, I love that dry season. And even when I came out of that dry season, I was meeting some frogs, and but I needed them because on my path to healing and in dating, I used those frogs as practice for the one. So what was I doing? I was practicing my vulnerability. I was practicing my self-esteem. I was practicing my boundary work. And so each frog prepared me even more. So by the time I got to my king, I
Yeah,
was a more well-rounded and whole queen. And so I made dating fun. I didn't make it a chore. I didn't make it a job. I didn't go back into the woods and say, oh, woe is me. This one didn't work. And I didn't look at each date as a potential.
come on.
They weren't all potentials, they were practice. So right out the gate with some of them, I knew, oh shoot, this is just going to be a nice meal once in a while, so I can practice my etiquette and manners. Like I compartmentalize each date, and I use them to make me better. And I made it fun because I was like, I refuse to have even this dating season try to take me too backwards. And then what I did do with those frogs is that it helped me to be able to know exactly what it was I wanted and
Yes.
to be able to identify the one. And so when I did meet my husband, what helped me with the frogs and with him was that if my husband said he was going to call, my husband called.
Come on.
If I set a boundary and said, this is what I do not accept and this is what I accept, he was like, cool. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. he made sure he removed any and all doubts and questions. So if I had any kind of doubts, questions, or unanswered stuff, he dotted those I's and crossed my T's. And what did that show me? That shows me that when a man has decided that he too is ready, he's going to make sure that he shows you his readiness.
Yeah.
And so that is what helped me. And to be able to even decide. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't perfect,
Yeah.
not even in our dating. And that's what I want, he wasn't perfect. So what does that mean? That means that my husband too is an individual on a path and a work in progress, but he wasn't a frog. And so what does that mean? That means that sometimes you got to be able to discern, right?
Yeah.
That we're all on a path to growth. And so how to be able to still discern your king, even though he may not necessarily, he's a flawed individual too.
Yeah.
And so, and the final sign that I knew that my husband was the one was that he proposed to me on Valentine's Day. Why is that significant? And I'm not a huge Valentine's Day person, so please,
Right.
I'm
Me
not going to
neither.
get caught up in that. But that was my grandmother's birthday. So anytime that something happened significant in my life, my grandmother always showed up. Some like I
Wow.
knew that I was having a daughter because in my dream, my grandmother was there.
Wow.
I knew I wasn't having a boy because when I had my second dream, she wasn't there.
Mm.
So when he proposed to me on Valentine's Day, that was my grandmother saying, okay, we can go. And so I literally, that's how, that was one of my signs.
I love it. I love it. You dropped some stuff. And I love what the way that you described dating, because in many cases, particularly in faith-based communities, I was raised in church, worked at churches, things like that. And I say this a lot, that I don't feel like what we got in those communities was wrong, but I do feel like it was incomplete. And so I had to shift my thinking years ago when I felt like I was ready to date again, years ago, from there was always this perception or thought that I'm dating to meet my husband. I'm dating because I'm trying to meet my next husband, right? It was always this, I'm dating because I'm chasing my husband. But my perspective changed this last time around when I was healthier. And I would tell people my reason for dating was three things. It was one, to learn about myself; two, to learn about the opposite sex; three, to have fun with the hopes that I'll meet the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. And your perspective going into dating takes so much pressure off of the dating process, right? So we don't get into this space of, as soon as you meet someone and y'all click and it doesn't work out, it's like, oh man, I'm depressed because that was the one. Y'all went on 2 dates, like 2 dates. And so for someone listening, I feel like this is for you. Just have fun in the dating process. One of the things that I did was, I still do, because I'm single at the time of this recording, I'm single. And so one of the things that I would do is I made this list of restaurants I wanted to try, because I like food. So if a man was like, "Where you want to go?" I'd literally pull an item out the drawer and be like, "Oh, I want to go here. I want to go here." But a big part of that, like you said, it was being able to practice my boundaries, being able to practice my self-awareness, being able to communicate my needs, and then also learning, what do I really want? So going into dating again, I had this idea of certain characteristics or lifestyles. I was like, oh, that's okay. Then you'd meet someone with that characteristic, and you're like, nah, I don't think I want that. So use this as a time to learn, and use this as a time to grow. And I believe that when we meet that person, you'll know, right? You'll know. We won't have to force it. Another thing that you talked about that I really, really love emphasizing: if a man wants to be with you, he is going to pursue you. If he's not calling, if he is not trying to spend time with you, he does not want to be with you. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but when a man wants to be with you, he is going to make it known and he is going to be intentional. The last relationship that I was in, we lived an hour apart, an hour. And this man would drive an hour so that we could have lunch for 45 minutes. So if he's not calling, he's not trying to see you. Like the movie said, he just ain't that into you. And that's okay.
And one of the things I also tell women too, especially older women, is that, and some younger too, men will put you on a rotation and get you in a routine, right? He'll call every Tuesday, he'll call every morning. Good morning, beautiful. Not what he's doing is you in a blind CC chat, and he done sent that good morning, beautiful to 10 women.
Come on.
And you're like, oh my gosh, he thought of me first thing in the morning. And he calls me every Wednesday at the same time. And then we chat every Friday. He's just got you in his rotation. Until that man has a conversation with you and he gets your permission to be exclusive, you are in the rotation. What
Yeah.
does that mean? That means you have to have a rotation too. You also have, you cannot be, just because he calls you every Wednesday, don't mean you pick up the phone every Wednesday at 8 when he called. Get a life so that if he calls you at 8 on your rotation, he could be like, where was you? Oh, I was living. Well, what's that look like? A whole lot of stuff, sir. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? That means that he's going to have to come correct, and he's going to have to come a little bit harder in order to pursue you if he's trying to decide who in his rotation he wants to be with. And so what does the women do? They start fantasizing because of the routine, right? You get used to the routine and you start making him your boo. Ma'am, he is not your boo. God bless you. He is
Yeah.
not your boo until he asks you to be his boo. And until then, you are to assume that you are still dating. You do not put your heart, you do not put anything else in there except for having fun. And another thing that I tell my ladies is that you have got to stop giving men so much access, and do not give them your ATM PIN number. And what does that mean? I'm talking about intimacy, because there's something about when we give ourselves intimately that you bond yourself to this man inaccurately and prematurely, so that when it does have to be cut, or when the strings do get cut, you are not emotionally attached to this individual because you gave him access that he was not worthy of and didn't prove himself for. And so that is also going to keep dating fun for you when you follow those boundaries.
I love it. I love it. And we're gonna dig into boundaries next because that's so huge. When we're talking about being big, a big
Mm,
part of that is our boundaries. One of the things that you said reminded me of a conversation that I've had with so many women about where do I stand in a relationship. And a mature man will let you know where you stand in that relationship, whether you're committed, whether, you're just friends. I remember talking to someone years ago, and she was telling me that there was a gentleman she was seeing, and she was on rotation because he showed up and called at a certain time. I want to say it was like Friday or Saturday or Sunday, but it was one of these things where it was like a rotation on the weekends, but didn't really talk any other time. And they were out together one day, and she introduced him as her boyfriend. And he was like, I'm not your boyfriend. And she's like, wait a minute, we've been spending all this time together for the last 3 months. And he was like, I'm not your boyfriend. And so we have to be bold enough. We have to be confident enough to act where do I stand in this relationship? What is this? What are we doing? Even if that answer is not what you want to hear. But that is what mature men do. They let you know where you stand in that relationship.
but you have to ask, April, because
Yes.
one of the things that when I work with my female clients is I ask them, what do you want? Because what women don't understand is the leverage that they hold in a dating relationship.
Yes.
You have leverage when your time is leverage. When somebody calls you for a date, you have to understand your value, that you get to choose whether or not you want somebody to even take you on a date, because your
Yeah.
time is valuable. When you understand your value and that you are lending a chunk of your life to someone so that they have an enjoyable time, you got to know and understand that value. So I asked him, what do you want? Because you have to tell men what you want, and you have to be willing to understand what that needs to look like for you. So if you want a committed relationship, then it's okay for you to go in and say, hey, I really like you and I'm okay with us dating, but I am dating to eventually be in something committed. And
Yeah.
so I just want to let you know what that looks like. um I have a timeline that I am not forcing you to be on.
Mm-hmm.
This is my timeline, sir. So my timeline is this. And if you're not there, that's cool. I'm going to be cool, but just know you no longer have access to me.
Come on.
And so it's not just about like, yes, he can be mature, but what do you want? You got to know what it is you want. You got to be willing to sacrifice what that looks like in order for you to get it. Because as long as you continue to give men access to you, what would cause them to do anything differently if you haven't articulated what your wants are? And that is your right. And that is what you should do going in, so that they are fully aware that when you check out, these are the reasons why. Like, you're real nice and everything, but I no longer want to give you access to me because this isn't going anywhere and my time is valuable. And I got some people that I'm looking at that are more possibilities than you. No, no,
Come
no,
on.
like, and that's for real. And
Yeah.
so what does that do? That ignites the chase in a man too. And
Yeah.
one of the things I hear women say, oh, I don't feel like playing a game. Ma'am, it's not a game. It's how we were created. Men were created to chase. And when you
Yes.
are not interested, when you are too available, why do they have to chase you? You don't ignite his thing that makes him a man.
Yeah.
So you are very, very, you, you could be dismissed. Like, you're in the rotation, but you're not in the running. Two
Yeah.
different
Oh, I
things.
love it. I love it. You are in the rotation, but not in the running. That should be on a t-shirt.
I'm gonna put it on one.
I love it. But everything you're saying talks about boundaries, right? Having hard conversations is part of setting your boundaries. So I want to dig into that just a little bit. What does it look like to have healthy boundaries in these dating relationships? What does that look like in reality?
So I'll give you an example. So when I was dating, like, I heard what you say. I'm a foodie. I like good food and I like sleep. Like, I need at least 6 hours, at least, and up to 8. Ooh, that's a good day. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I need my rest. So what did that mean? That meant that one of my boundaries when I was dating was, you can't call me after 10 o'clock for anything. My friends know that. My good friends know not to call me after 10. So if a man that I was dating kept calling me after 10, after the boundary, that was data. I
Yeah.
used that data. I got it. Right. So what did that tell me? I had to decide whether or not I wanted to keep him in rotation to, figure out, like, if he was a good meal, I compartmentalized him. He's not the one, but he is a good restaurant friend, right?
Yeah.
So you have to know and take those data based upon your boundaries, because your boundaries are not walls. They weed out people. So
Yeah.
walls don't let people in. Walls don't let people near you or access at all. But boundaries allows you to collect data and be able to see people for who they really are. And you're supposed to use the boundaries accurately and effectively. You're supposed to take that data in order to make an informed decision. If
Yes.
somebody keeps crossing your boundaries, they are not the one. Not calling me after 10 o'clock is very reasonable, because anything after 10 is a booty call.
Come on.
What are we going to do after 10, sir? What?
Come
Because
on.
I get off at 5. That's 5 hours that we could talk, chat, have a date, have a nice little coffee. Like, there's a lot you can do in 5 hours after I get off of work.
Yeah.
Another boundary. If I wanted to go out on Saturday, you had to call me by Wednesday to ask me for a date. Anything after Wednesday for Saturday? No. What? No, I'm busy. And that busy could be a Netflix movie and some kettle chips.
Look, okay.
But my boundary is you have to understand and value that if you want access to me, then you ask me in advance and you understand my value. You don't just roll up on me on a Saturday and say, hey, I got some tickets. Because that meant that whoever was in your rotation and in the running said no to you. And I'm number 5. And I was the one that you was like, oh, Felice will go. No, Felice not going.
Right.
I got a good Netflix movie and some kettle chips that I'd rather go with, right? Than you. So those are the kind of boundaries that I'm talking about. What does that do? That data gives you information about who this man is in
Yeah.
relation to you and what you mean to them. Boundaries are beautiful. I am the boundary queen.
Come
I
on.
love them. Boundaries helps to keep you safe. Boundaries helps you to make informed decisions. And boundaries really do help nourish, nurture, and progress really good relationships, healthy relationships.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love how you were very specific about your boundaries. One of the ways I believe that our boundaries get skewed is that we're not specific about them. One, we don't communicate them, right? So we talked about the frogs, we talked about the rotation. And like you said, if your boundary is you don't call me after 10, but every time he calls at 10:30, you pick up the phone, you're not enforcing your boundaries. And sometimes we don't champion those boundaries because we're afraid of what we're going to lose. If I don't pick up at 10:30, he might not call me again. If I don't be the last minute person on Saturdays, he may not ask me out again. But that's okay. Because if you are truly living, like we get to living, that is something I think is so profound. If we are not out here living, then we are filling our time with so many unnecessary things. And like you said, for me, I'm business. I've been in business for a long time. My thing is my business. I am okay with not having a date on Saturday night because I got a ton of other stuff. I go out with my friends. I take myself out. I do stuff in right. So I'm not going to be the person that you call every Saturday, like you said, number 6 on the list. Like, oh, I know April free. April probably not going to be free. So so I loved our talk about boundaries because they are just so important.
And you
So
have to see, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but April, you have to see things properly because that fear that you have that he's not going to call, that's a lie. They always call.
yeah,
They always call. Please know that. But not only that, your fear is unrealistic because if he's not calling, he's already not the one. So the thing you fear is already there. He's not the one. So you're never going to have him anyway. So why fear him not calling? Why fear yourself missing out on somebody who is not the one? Because what you're doing is you are having somebody who's going to hinder and distract you from the
come on.
one. So God can't send you the one when he knows that you are frivolous with who you giving access to. Because just like you're his child, that man he's sending to you is his child too. And he's
Yes,
not just going to send his child to somebody who doesn't understand that it's okay to let certain things go so that you can open up yourself for the one.
yeah. Yeah, that is so good. God's timing is absolutely perfect. As we kind of close this episode, which girl, I could talk to you about this literally for hours, for hours. But I think it's so important to remember that not only does God have your back in this dating season, but he's got your potential partner's back too. And he is not going to allow you to mess over him, and he's not going to allow him to mess over you. And so that is so good what you said about how God is like, look, I'm not about to send this amazing person. I'm not about to send my son to you just knowing that you're not ready, that you're not ready. So, Felice, like I said, I could talk to you for hours, but I know that we have to end at some point. But I just want to say thank you again for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom with us, for doing the work that you are doing with women to help them to be big in life, to take up space, to show up where God needs them to show up. So, just as we close, if there's someone listening, and it could be man or woman, who's saying, I'm in that space of just not sure about myself, not sure about my self worth, what would you share with them?
So just know this, that whether or not you're sure, we're going to list the facts. The facts are that because you're here, you are valuable. Because you're here, you are worthy of everything good that this life has to offer. That is a fact, regardless of whether you know it and or whether you feel it. It is a fact. And that there's something that you were meant and called to do. And that's what Be Big is about. Be Big is about getting to the root of what's causing that confusion or what's causing that I don't know, and getting to the root of those traumas, those things that are hindering you from seeing yourself properly. Because the reason why I believe Be Big is such a movement is because when God looks at you, he doesn't look at you from the lens of your beginnings. He doesn't look at you from the lens of your trauma. He doesn't look at you from the lens of your pain. He looks at you as the finished product. He looks at you as the victorious, triumphant, boundless, empowered, bodacious, intuitive, and grandiose child that he created. That's what he sees. And that is what we are called to become. And so there's some steps. If you'd like to know them, please reach out to me, because that's what I love. I love helping people get to that. And what are those steps to start? And there's a couple. And so thank you for asking. I'm on Instagram as the b.big.coach. I am on Facebook as the Be Big Coach. I am also Real Talk with Felice on Instagram. And so you have all those ways to get to me. And my website is thebebigcoach.com. So all of those ways you can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I'm glad you share where people can get in touch with you. On this resource, I don't have guests on just because. I have them on because of their experience, because of their expertise, but also because they may have something that you need. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I need to connect with her, get out there and connect with her, y'all. Get the resources that she has for you. And I'll make sure that all of her links are in the show notes so that you guys can find her easier. Well, I just want to say thank you again, Felice, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening and connecting When Love Comes podcast. Like I said earlier, my goal, my passion is to provide resources and testimonies and experts and all these things to make sure that you guys are ready when love comes. So get
Mm.
out there, explore the resources, be big, explore your boundaries. And I want you guys to be ready when love comes. All right.
April, where are you at again? What city?
So I am in, I'm gonna stop the recording. Are you sure?